All right, so we're going to keep it simple. I'd like each of you to introduce yourselves, and then we'll get into some questions, and then questions from the audience. Does that sound good, everybody? So let me reintroduce myself. I'm Nicola Williams. I am a 30-year business owner, the Williams Agency, based right here in Harvard Square, and we celebrated 30 years April 1st. And we're a social mission-driven marketing agency, and we plan events that matter. Some of the events you've seen around town, like we co-founded the Boston Local Food Festival. We're a producer of the Boston Jerk Fest, and we just do all kinds of fun activities for the community. And I'm also the facilitator of the Cambridge Somerville Black Business Network. And many of the members are here today, I see, and our steering committee. And so I am just so thrilled because the Cambridge Somerville Black Business Network was founded in collaboration with Cambridge Local First and Sustainable Business Network. And we're just thrilled to continue to collaborate. I'm a member of Cambridge Local First as well, so I'm a proud member of Cambridge Local First. I'm so thrilled to be here and see all of you today. So I'm going to get straight into the panel, have everyone introduce themselves, and then we have some interesting questions, because this is all about money, right? Show me the money. So these ladies will be letting us know how can we access creative funding. So that sounds good? That's an entrepreneur, right? All right, so Betty, take it away.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for putting the chairs down on the floor level. I was a little scared to climb up there. So I'm Betty Francisco. I'm the CEO of Boston Impact Initiative. I've been there for about 4 years, running basically what is a nonprofit impact investment fund, and now a CDFI, a community development finance institution. We focus on providing integrated capital, blended capital, that's debt equity grants to small business owners that are advancing sustainable businesses. And we predominantly aim to finance entrepreneurs of color that haven't had traditional access to capital. My background is as a corporate lawyer, so I started my career doing a lot of venture capital, mergers and acquisitions, startup financing at a large law firm, and then went in-house to a health and fitness chain. So I'm what we call a recovering lawyer right now. But I use the law every day in what we do. I'm also very active in the community. I co-founded an organization called the Latina Circle, which focused on getting more Latinas into positions of power and influence, and that became Amplify Latinx, which again is moving economic and political power for Latinos in the Commonwealth. Now it's called We Are ALX. And just involved in a lot of different things, boards, commissions, always have spent my career trying to advance racial equity, economic justice across the whole spectrum in the work that I do. So I see my board work, my community work, and my daily work very much interconnected. And I'll talk a little bit about this when we talk about creative capital. The way I even got to Boston Impact is I started as an entrepreneur in 2015 after my career in law, and as an angel investor. So we should talk about personally becoming an investor into small businesses. I'll pass it on to Theresa.
Thank you, Betty. I'm Theresa Ng. I am the VP of Community Investments over at Mass Development. I lead the Biz Empower grant program. So a little bit of background on me. I have a entrepreneurship and small business background. I was 14 years prior to the pandemic in the coffee and food beverage industry and helped a lifestyle brand expand their business. And so for the past 4 years, I've had the greatest honor in giving out matching grants to small business owners throughout the state that helps build equity, so either helping them with acquiring purchase of property, expanding their business through leasehold improvements, equipment purchases, and other capital needs.
Is this on? Yes? Okay. I'm Jessica David. I'm actually your neighbor from Rhode Island. I am the co-founder and president of a nonprofit organization called Local Return that focuses on building community wealth in neighborhoods that have experienced generations of disinvestment, harmful extraction, exploitation, no investment at all. And also the co-founder and president of the Rhode Island Community Investment Cooperative, which is a in-process community investment fund that Local Return started up. We're actually the first diversified community investment fund, DCIF, in the country. And basically that's just a long way of saying that we plan to invest primarily in real estate. We want to help small businesses own their space, their real estate, and build equity through real estate. We want to help average people build generational wealth through, maybe owning a multifamily. We want to help community projects that always seem to get stuck in certain neighborhoods. We're in the process of raising $3.5 million. We can talk more about this, but we've deliberately structured our fund so that community investors, anybody in Rhode Island can invest. So it's not just for accredited or super wealthy people. And that's a really important piece. We also have an opportunity for accredited investors who are not from Rhode Island. So if that is anyone in the room who wants to talk to me, please do. And I guess just a little bit more about me. If Betty is a recovering lawyer, I am a recovering philanthropy person. So I worked at the Rhode Island Foundation for 13 years, overseeing strategy and community investments, grant making, capacity building there. A lot of the work I do now is really in direct response to my feelings and observations about philanthropy. And I'm also a student at Harvard Divinity School. I'm getting my Master of Divinity. So I'm actually in Cambridge often, and probably patronizing many of your businesses. So I'm looking forward to finding out who's what business today.
Thank you. Thank you, Betty, Theresa, and Jessica for the introductions. So I'm going to start with the first question. And Betty, you're not always going to be first, so I'll mix it up. So the first question is, what does creative capital mean to you within the context of the body of your work? And what does it matter for the future of small business funding? And I'd also like to add in the context of the political environment currently.
Oh, you want me to go first? Yes. I love this question because at Boston Impact Initiative, what we believe we're designing creative capital solutions for small business owners. We call it integrated capital. So we recognize that businesses need flexible financing, and it's different based on the stages of growth that they're at, right? So you might be just starting a business and you might need a grant to buy some equipment. As you're earning some revenue, you could use debt. I know people don't like debt, but there are flexible types of debt, like revenue-based financing, right? That fluctuates based on the amount of revenue that you make. And at some point, you may be in a high growth trajectory and you need equity. You might need to give up a part of your business to get to that high growth. And the way our traditional capital systems work, capital is very siloed, right? You think of going to a bank for a loan. You think of going to a venture capitalist for equity financing. You think of going to a foundation for a grant. And we think of capital as very siloed. And there are not a lot of providers that you could go to that can design something that meets your needs versus forcing a product on you. So to me, flexible capital is being able to design to your particular needs as a business owner and to adjust, right, the terms of that capital as needed. And that is what BII does. So we provide creative financing solutions, what we call patient, fair, entrepreneur-friendly capital across that whole spectrum, from debt to equity to grants. And then we also pair that with social capital, right? Because you can't just get money. You also, I think equally important is the knowledge that you're gaining as a business owner with folks that, you know, have run businesses and know how to connect you with the right kinds of knowledge capital on how you can run your business more efficiently and more sustainably. And then also social capital, the connections that you need, right, to advance yourself and your business. So connections can mean everything from someone that can help you gain a contract, someone that can open a new door, someone that can advise you, right? Social capital, I believe, is equally important as financial capital. So that's to me what creative capital is all about. And I really wish more providers, right, had the flexibility to do all of that. So that is part of the movement, right, around that foundations and other capital providers are aiming towards, is being able to provide different types of capital more sustainably so that they're not just bucketed into one little sleeve.
Thank you. Teresa, you'd like to comment?
Yeah, so I'm just going to add to what Betty had spoken about, kind of non-traditional, non-debt-based access to capital that aligns with the realities of entrepreneurs here in the room and small business owners. So kind of sharing a little bit about how I see it in the work in BizEmpower with matching grants and community-driven models that can open doors for small business owners here in Cambridge, throughout the state, that have been traditionally or historically excluded from financial systems. So we really focus on helping underserved communities get access. Why these creative capital matters is because it meets the business owner, the priority of where you guys are at in your business, and it accounts for just, as Betty had spoken, prioritize like the impact and ownership with businesses over short-term profits. And if we're going to be serious about building a diverse and resilient small business community in our ecosystem here in Mass, we have to shift not only about how much capital is available to small businesses, but about building and how it's structured and who these programs are designed for.
Yeah, and totally agree with everything that Theresa and Betty said. I think I would add maybe two more pieces. One is that when I really actually struggled with this question because I don't think our model is actually all that creative. In some ways, it's sort of ancient, the idea of pooling money from a community for the benefit of people, ventures in that community. I think humans have been doing that for a really long time. And it's just our modern structures and laws and regulations that make it so difficult to do that and drive us to send our money out of the community to make other people richer, and in the process make it really hard for people within the community and businesses to actually access money. So I guess it's creative in that we're really trying to find ways to work within that modern system and structure to do that, to do what is, I think, a very ancient and human urge and practice. The other thing I wanted to just zero in on, maybe two things actually. So now I'm going to say three things. One is, Betty really touched on the multiple forms of capital, which I think is a really important piece. So things have just become so much about money, so much about like what's that percentage return, and driving purely towards profit and expecting levels of growth that are, and at least in my state, economic development is very much about that still like hockey stick growth rate instead of just steady, solid businesses that form the anchors of our places, our neighborhoods. So recognizing that it's not just, money is absolutely critical, but it's not just about money, and there are many other kinds of capital, including relationships, social capital, including like the ability to understand money and to use these words that people throw out there to be, I think, often really intimidating and scary. A neighborhood and a community's ability to like exist in that space and feel confident, I think, is a form of capital. And then the third thing that I do think is a bit creative about what we're doing, and again, I think would love to see even more of, is we're trying to anchor the decision making in the community. So in our case, we're a cooperative. Every investor into our fund owns a piece of the fund. And we have an investment committee that is made up primarily of community residents who have not necessarily had a lot of investment or real estate experience, but we're learning together how to think about deals, how to think about risk, how to think about return. And I think that's probably a key piece to mention, is that it's I don't think it's even being creative, but it's like really rethinking what has become traditional norms around risk and return.
Great, thank you. Theresa, hold on to that mic because I'm going to reach out to you next. Can you share an example of a business that succeeded specifically because of access to your funding? But Theresa, you may not be able to answer it because you work for the government. But if whatever,
So I can share like a range.
whatever you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, no, that's actually a great example. So I'm going to share like kind of a range of three businesses here locally in Cambridge, how they were able to access the Biz Empower grant, and kind of how it helped them grow further in their business. So some of you guys here might know Nine Taste in the room? Yes, okay. Local, right down the street here in Harvard Square. So they received 11K for their matching grant for Biz Empower. And so they used it for something like flooring to help improve customer experience. And that directly translated to the business owner in having more confidence for the program, and that translated into sales. There's also, sorry, I'm just gonna make sure I get the numbers right for the match portion that we did. With Forge over here, they used it for 36K to build out their patio, so an expansion, especially after the pandemic, to be able to grow their business. And usually when you're doing a large renovation projects, business owners, it's hard to access that traditional funding through a loan. So they're able to use it for a very small portion for the patio to expand their business. And then Nokia Glass School used it, 24K we had matched for the purchase of equipment to kind of help them scale production. So as a result, they were able to hire 2 new employees. So this is kind of like, how do I describe this? Kind of job creation backed by community capital as well. Is that?
Those are great examples, and just to let you know, the MBIZ just closed, but there will be another round in the future.
Yeah, so the Biz Empower Grant program just closed Sunday evening. There will be a future round, hopefully late fall. So it is in the bond bill for $10 million, and I think it's about $1 million each year that is fiscally allocated.
So definitely take advantage of that and get your receipts in order, or quotes, right?
Quotes, yes,
Quotes in
professional
order.
quotes.
So Betty, do you have any examples you'd like to share?
Oh my God, we have countless of examples. So just to give you a flavor, so we have one business up in Lawrence. They do energy efficiency weatherization services through the Mass Save program. They first came to us when they had one crew truck, right? They were going around doing the energy audits and then helping homeowners, increase their energy efficiency with replacement of windows, weatherization work, things like that. So it was a very small business. And when they went to a bank, the banks were like, oh, first of all, you haven't been in business for more than 2 years. Banks do not lend to you if you haven't been in business for more than 2 years and have operating, revenues and can show financials. And then also the business was seasonal, right? During the summer months, lots of business. In the winter months, it was slower. So banks looked at it like a seasonal business. So that's where our creative financing comes into play. We saw that cycle of revenue went up and down, and it fluctuated a lot, right, based on revenues coming in the summer and the winter. And so for that, we structured what we call a royalty finance loan. It's basically a loan that is, your payments are pegged to how much revenue you make. So if you have low revenue in, say, the winter months, your loan payment is a lot less, right? Because it's a percentage, say 5% of your revenue. But if you are, if your revenue is high during, say, the summer months, you pay a bigger payment back to us, right? And so they were able to repay that loan fairly early from the maturity date because they were doing so well and they were growing rapidly. And they were also trying to grow to their employee base and add more crew trucks. So last year we refinanced, because they had very few payments left on that royalty loan, we refinanced to a regular fixed term loan at a lower interest rate that allowed them to now grow their employee base and their work. They're now at 36 employees, I think maybe a little bit more, 5 crew trucks, and almost about to hit 4 to 5 million in revenue this year. So that's impactful, right? Being able to structure something that is high risk, right? Because no bank will touch that. Even other CDFIs, lenders like ours, might be more risk adverse to do something like that. And BII is able to structure that kind of transaction because of the investors that we have. You know, you talked about having community-based investors, but also wealthy investors that are not expecting high returns from their investment into BII. That allows us to provide this flexible, low-cost capital to entrepreneurs. We have many others. We also do equity investments, right? Sometimes your business just cannot sustain a loan. You don't have the cash flow to pay back. You need really patient capital. And so with equity, we try to structure equity investments because we don't want to take ownership from you. Our whole goal is to build ownership for small businesses and allow you to create generational wealth by owning as much as possible. Yes, clap for that. And we also want your employees to have an opportunity to own. But we recognize sometimes you do need equity, right, to be able to grow that business. And so we do what we call structured equity whenever possible. So we might take a small percentage of your business in exchange for an equity investment. But if we can project like the point where you're going to be more sustainable and be able to buy the equity back from us. And we do something that no venture capitalist will do is cap our return. Right, so a VC really, or an angel investor even, will want like 5x, 10x, 20x, right, the amount that they put into your business. We will cap between 1.5 to 3 times our investment. The more impactful you are, meaning if you're creating good jobs, you're paying living wages, you're considering employee ownership or cooperative models, things that build wealth and power, right, for workers and in your community, or you're driving climate sustainability, the more impact you have from a social and ecological perspective, the more we will reward you, right, by taking a lower return, because we view returns as both financial and social, right, and ecological. We view returns as blended. We don't only expect you, right, to achieve these huge financial milestones. We also want you to drive social and climate impact. So look for lenders or capital providers that value that, right? That's equally important, especially if you have a social venture and those are things that you care about.
Well, that's real flexible financing, right? I mean, just being able to work with the entrepreneur, come back and continue to work with them and grow with them in their success is so incredibly important.
The one thing I'll say is, you know, we have we have a limited amount of capital, right? We are still a very small fund, 20 million, getting to a $20 million fund, and to really be able to help lots of business owners, we have to work collaboratively with other investors, right? So when it was mass growth capital, now it's mass development. But you know, we refer to other CDFIs, other investors that we believe are mission aligned to us. And it's really important to work collectively that way, because there's a point where our businesses don't need us anymore, right? They actually will be able to get traditional capital, and that's what we want. We want businesses to be able to access the regular financial markets, but sometimes, you know, we need a leg up, right? And that's part of the work that BI is doing.
That's great. Jessica, do you have
Yeah, I got
1 minute?
Okay, sorry. I got really excited about Betty's. I actually am going to talk about one that I was not able to make. So when I mentioned being in philanthropy, I was at the Rhode Island Foundation. We had an innovation prize, essentially, that was sort of venture philanthropy for social entrepreneurs. I'm boiling it down. And someone came to us, had what I thought was a fabulous proposal. This person had worked within the food systems in Rhode Island for, I don't know, over a decade at that point, had real expertise around food waste and kind of the cycle of food waste, wanted to start what was called the compost plant. So basically picking up food waste from food businesses, creating compost in Rhode Island. He was going to call it Rhody Gold, selling that at a premium to Rhode Islanders. I thought this is a fabulous business. He needed a truck, basically. He had money from friends and family. He had put his own sort of both financial and a lot of sweat equity into it, and he needed a truck. And the foundation at the time, the committee that was reviewing this said, oh no, that's too risky. We don't want to do that. And you know, this was like the start of my process of like, this is a perfect example of, you know, the multiple kinds of impact this could have meant financial stability for him. He has since gone and made that business very successful. They've pivoted. He has a business partner. They have 20-something employees. They've got contracts with RISD and Brown and many they've got some large waste things that do things. They're big machines. And so he got there, but it took him several more years and a lot of angst and a lot of, I think, struggle along the way. So to me, that's just an example of what I would have liked to have been able to do, and that informs some of what we do now.
That's really good to know. Thank you. So one of the things that Cambridge Local First does is in the mission is to advocate for small businesses. So advocacy is very much local independent businesses, part of our work. And so I want you to touch on what kinds of policy reform locally or federally could unlock broader access to financing for local entrepreneurs. I know we do some really great things in Massachusetts, which is great, but what else can be done? You want to start, Theresa? Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go first.
Jessica.
Okay, and I did make notes on this because I didn't want to forget anything, but of course I have to have my glasses in order to see my notes. So I had 4 things. One is, I think, national securities law reform that makes it easier for community investment funds and funds like Betty's and many others around the country to operate and do the kinds of flexible financing that they do. It turns out it's actually really hard to do this because of a lot of reasons, some of which, you know, I think were well-intentioned but are very outdated. Things like the investment securities law of 1940, I want to say. So we definitely desperately need securities law reform at the national level. Related to that, we need more opportunities for non-accredited investors to be able to invest. So I would love for my retirement money to be in local businesses, not in whatever the heck it's in now, which don't even ask, I can't tell you, because it just, I don't know, it's in some funds with names. But it's virtually impossible to shift that money and have it invested into my community. And so we need to change that. And I think that's going to require some federal reform. At the state level, I think there are starting to be some interesting ways of incentivizing local investment. There's a bill in Michigan that I think is moving close to passage, which would provide a tax credit. It's a pretty small tax credit. I think it's $2,500 or $3,000 to match local investment. So if somebody invested in a local business that, you know, like yours, if they invested in a community investment fund like mine, they would just demonstrate that to the state and they get a $3,000 tax credit. My state does huge tax credits for out-of-state companies and out-of-state developers and out-of-state movie studios. I would so much rather see, you know, those tax credits go to local people who are investing in local businesses and keeping that money going. And then, yay, thank you. And then I think there's just funding. So it's hard to do this kind of funding. If it all worked, the math, everyone would be doing it. So it does require patience. It does require, different calculations around return. And it requires operations. It requires the support and technical assistance that goes along with it. And that's people and organizational capacity. And so, I think at the state, local, or federal level, just funding to support this kind of infrastructure and ecosystem building that not just allows like individual deals to get done, but the kind of integrated approach that BII is talking about, where you can move from one type of capital to another depending on how your needs change over time. So those are my 4 suggestions.
Theresa, you want to touch on that?
I'm going to pass on the policy
Right.
portion of that answer, and I'm going to share a little bit about mass development and a program called Small Business Technical Assistance with Betty. There are a few folks here, Acetone, BII, and East Somerville Main Streets in the room. So in many ways, having the small business technical assistance and how mass development partners with community economic development nonprofits throughout the state to help deliver technical assistance to and access to capital in Massachusetts to small businesses. So small business technical assistance providers, for folks in the room that do not know, they help one-on-one you as a business owner and entrepreneur kind of navigate the system. In an example, for applying to the Biz Empower grant, they may know like access to resources that you may have and like guidance around projects. And in many, many ways, these, how do I describe this? Technical assistance providers are kind of a link between the small business owner, a grant program kind of from like an idea to actually, like an idea like you have for growth, to an actually funded project. And in that, especially the trust and the relationship you build with your small business assistance provider is very important, and all of the trust that you also build with your bank relations also help as well.
Great. Betty?
Yeah, I'll add, so sometimes it's all about the money, right? And a lot of the work that we do is privately funded. Of course, Theresa talked about state government, right, providing capital. And I will say I've seen the power of all of us being advocates to move more capital to small businesses, especially during the pandemic, right? Remember when we all had to close and we couldn't catch up, right? A lot of businesses just didn't have enough revenue, had to lay people off. I was part of, through Amplify Latinx, collaborated with the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts and many, many other organizations and chambers to work with the state to create the biggest small business grant program for COVID relief in the country. Massachusetts moved almost $700 million to small businesses during the pandemic, and almost half of that went to women and businesses owned by people of color, LGBTQ veterans, right? And that was because of the advocacy that so many community members did. Did you know that? You did. I know you're like, you didn't know that. A lot of money went out the door, but it was because of the advocacy and the collaboration with state government to move funds in this way. So I would say now what we do need more of is, those grants have run out. So we still need grants for small businesses. They might be more like startup grants or grants to expand your business or to acquire property, right? But having specialized funds through the state budget or even local budgets is really important, but it takes a lot of advocacy from business owners like you, from chambers, from big, corporations to say we need to have our budget, our state budget reflect our values, which is we support our small businesses, and that means having really flexible buckets of capital, right, for them, from grants to what we call loan guarantees for lenders like ours, right? Because we can't always take that much risk, but if we can tap into state money to guarantee some of that loan, right, if it doesn't go well, that's also equally important. There's also a lot of push that we have for the state, also for federal government to support funds like ours. CDFIs get federal funding, but they can also get state funding. And again, that has to be in the bond bill and in the state budget every year, and we have to advocate for that. And then the last thing I'll say, it's about the money, but it's also about your ability to get contracts. So where there's a lot of opportunity for policy reform is for government, right, to diversify its base of vendors, what we call, supplier diversity or diverse procurement programs. The city of Boston at one point, right, did a disparity study showing that less than 1% of contracts go to Black and brown businesses. And there was a lawsuit by community activists, right, to be able to rectify that. And now they've exponentially increased the number of contracts going to diverse businesses, almost, over like 13, 14% at this point. So when you really focus and put your policies and align them to values, right, you can really create more economic opportunity for so many businesses in our community.
Thank you for sharing that. Also, and to add a couple of other things around advocacy and policy, I mean, your voices matter, and it's huge in terms of, as Betty shared, moving the needle, getting the state on board to make sure that businesses that were underrepresented were represented in terms of funding. And so that fight continues. Also, policies that are more supportive for small businesses, because it's an investment in our community. You invest in small businesses, you invest in Main Street, you're investing in people's economic livelihood. And it's, frankly, the engine of our community. And so really it's important when Cambridge Local First sends out, a call for action, use your voices as members and respond, because it does matter. It really does make a difference. So don't underestimate that. We're part of a broader network. Betty and I sit on a capital access committee that's advocating on the state level on a monthly basis, on a daily basis, to make sure that funds are available and creatively, because the work is not done yet. Cambridge did a disparity study advocated by the Cambridge Somerville Black Business Network, and our numbers were worse. Less than 0.25% went to Black-owned businesses. Women and Latino businesses and didn't fare that much better either. So we have what we call an economic crisis for small business in Cambridge in terms of procurement. But the city recognizes that and is moving towards change. But that change cannot happen without our voices. And we need to continue to make our cities and our government accountable. Because unless we raise our voice and make them accountable, change is not going to happen. So as advocacy is so important for our small business. Yeah, I'm preaching, but it's really important in order to move the needle, because we have a lot of work to do. And we have people like these women here who really care. And they need the support. There's a lot on their shoulders and our shoulders, and we need all of us to move that. So on the federal level, worker-owner, there's a bipartisan support. It's going to take a while, but my colleague who works with worker-owner companies like Harpoon and Sullivan Tire and maybe Market Basket, the regulations are very challenging to encourage worker ownership. So what can the federal government do to incentivize that? So there's actually some federal policy that my colleague, my suite mate, is working on in changing that to get bipartisan support to provide, remove the barriers to, and also invest in worker owners. So look out for that. I mean, it's been going on for a couple of years. It takes a while, like moving an elephant, but those are the types of things that are going on from a micro level, on a local, very localized level, to the national level. But we can't do it without your voices. How much time do we have left? Plenty? Okay. All right, so we're going to move on to what's one thing a small business owner should know about in terms of alternative capital that they don't always hear from traditional funders? I know debt could be a bad word for some communities, especially communities of color. So you say debt and you're like, run. But it's true. I mean, partly because of historical issues around, you know, putting your money in your mattress because you don't trust institutions, a college loan weight on some communities. So there's context to that. But talk about something that a small business owner, getting ready, like how do they get ready to get that flexible capital from your networks and your organizations? What do they need to do? Having an idea is one thing, but really being able to execute that, and how do they get their ducks in a row, or what do they need to do in order to be successful in accessing the capital, the flexible capitals that you have? You want to start?
So alternative capital exists. In kind of grant world, I like to think of it, it's not charity. In many ways, it's kind of you as a business owner understanding how to, sorry, I lost the word. Utilize kind of these programs or these grants or grants like Biz Empower as a strategic tool in order to kind of grow your business. I had another thought that I was thinking as you were speaking, so I'm trying to backtrack. I apologize. In that it's about, how do I describe this? As in utilizing these resources or grants that are available, these tools are not designed as like a last resort for your business. It's not going to bail out in that way, and also being able to kind of, again, I can speak hours and hours about small business technical assistance and kind of like that network, and then building the relationship with the bank that you've already had, with your loan officer. It's about, I think you had spoke about like, what do they need to do? I think first coming to events like this, right? And kind of learning about what's out there available, like in your community, and then resources, and also it's not about just, oh, here's this grant and here's XYZ. It's about understanding how to best, I do apologize. There's a thought that I'm thinking about the funding that aligns with your value as a business owner, that based on your timeline, okay, your projected timeline, and then your goals, and it's not like the other way around. And if you guys are already in the room, that you're taking that first big step. And then again, we have small business technical assistance. I can talk forever. BII, Acetone is in the room, East Somerville Main Streets. There's a wealth of knowledge, and Betty touched on it. I think you've heard it as social capital that can really elevate your business in being able to think about your business not from just a survival point, but to thriving.
Thank you.
Great. So I want you to walk away knowing that you have choice, right? Because it's one, being an entrepreneur is one of the loneliest journeys, right? You feel like I'm doing this alone. I'm working, in my business all the time. I can't work on my business, on me as a leader. But there is choice, and Massachusetts is one of the, I think, most robust states with resources for small businesses. The problem is you don't know where to find them, right? You need to figure out, okay, how do I tap into them? And the reality is we kind of have two ecosystems for small businesses. We've got the sort of main streets, like what you see in Cambridge, all these, as I was walking here, I was like, oh my God, this is such a thriving, set of blocks. It's beautiful. But Main Street's businesses need a different kind of support than, say, the innovation economy if you're growing a high-tech climate startup, right? Those are also here in Cambridge on the other side. They have a whole different set of resources and networks. So knowing what is the kind of business you're trying to start and grow and where to find those supports is really important, because they do exist here, right? There's lots of them, but you find them through networks like this, like Cambridge Local First, through chambers, through colleges and universities, through the state, right, has other programs, like there's Mass Development, but there's also Mass Ventures that has programming. There's incubators and accelerators, right? So these are programs that help you connect to resources and capital. So that's one, find that network that you feel good in, that you feel is targeted to the type of business you're trying to grow, right? If you're in food, in Boston, there's Commonwealth Kitchen, right? That has a commissary kitchen that is, they're experts at helping food businesses launch. Surround yourselves with the right resources. So that's one. The second thing on capital is, as I mentioned in the beginning, right? There are different kinds of capital that are best suited to your needs based on the growth of your business, right? So if it's really early on and you're just vetting an idea, in the startup world, we call that finding your product market fit. Who is your customer? How do you get that really right? And you might do lots of things going to pitch competitions and getting funding from that. We have one entrepreneur that literally has raised over $250,000 from pitching because she's so good at it and she has such an amazing concept. And she has gotten some contracts, but she's raised a lot of capital from pitching, right? So there's lots of competitions like that. And that's great because that's non-dilutive capital, right? And you could use that to grow your operations. But you can also do things like crowdfunding to test an idea. If you're making a product or you're testing a service, right? There's crowdfunding that you can do. I think what's the other program you guys had for crowdfunding with a match, right? So there's things like that to test out your product, but also to find your customer base. And then as you kind of go, move ahead, don't think you're going to get a loan from a bank if you're a startup. You're just not, because you don't have any revenue, right? Banks need to have revenue. They need to know you're going to be able to pay that thing back. So look for alternative lenders or investors. We are one of them, but there's many others in Massachusetts that we call, CDFIs or community capital. Look for them, like Leaf, Nectar, Dorchester Bay, JPNDC. There's a number of them, that both have their own capital to lend, but also work with the Small Business Administration to help you with those loans. And then if you are doing kind of a higher growth startup, there are lots of angel networks. Angel investors are people that put in their own money, right? They personally invest into your business, but many of them work through angel groups. Some of them are focused on investing in women. I started angel investing through a group called Pipeline Angels, and they're focused on getting capital to women entrepreneurs. So find those angels as well, right? Because they're great at offering advice and opening up doors, but also providing capital. And then last thing I'll say is, you were sort of mentioning this around values. Don't just take any money. Take money from investors or people that align with your personal values. If they're going to make you do things like, go this way or grow your business that way, that may not be who you want to align yourself with, right? Really take some time to know who you're getting into bed with, because when you take money from a more institutional investor, that is a marriage, right? And they're going to have expectations of you, so make sure those expectations align with what you want to do with your business, especially if you're trying to do more of what we call, like, you know, businesses that are trying to really build community wealth and power, like employee-owned business, cooperatively owned businesses, right? You need to find the right kinds of investors to support that.
I think that's great advice. It goes both ways. And, you know, I share a lot of entrepreneurs. Before you need funding, establish that relationship. Whether it's a banker, get to know your banker. Don't say, I'm desperate, I need money. Get to understand, they're people too. Get to understand your funders, your bankers, et cetera, before you need the money. So that when you do need the money, there's a relationship already. There's that bond that you, because it's technically a marriage you're getting into with these funders. So you need to get to know your partner, right? So that's really important. I'm going to open it up for questions in the audience. Any questions for these esteemed panelists? Michelle? Yeah.
Okay. So some of these funding opportunities, I think the data reflects that the people in the community, some of the people in the community that are more willing to take the hit are some of these female-owned, minority-owned businesses. And if the funding is being structured so that you need, a match in order to get that $30,000, I just would like some kind of consideration taken to who that's cutting out of the funding, because there's a whole bunch of businesses that don't have that match, that $3,000. We've been through 2 years of COVID. We've been through record interest rate hikes. A lot of businesses are surviving. They're tough, but they're saddled with debt. So they may not have that $3,000, and they're not going to charge you and pay 35% on it, because that's what I went to another conference last week, and they were talking about how these credit card companies are charging 35%. So, I would just like for some kind of consideration to be taken for those types of businesses who are being cut out of that funding. And why do I need $3,000 to get $3,000 if this is supposed to help the community? I, for one, am in total support of ownership, of employee ownership businesses. I'm thinking of starting another one that is going to be employee owned. But if I can't get the funding to get off the ground, and the things are structured in a way where it only helps people who already have the money, or I have to go through a reimbursement program where I have to pay for it first, and then I got to wait till the deal closes in order to pay for it. I'm not going to charge it. We know that, because if I charge it, I'm going to get whacked 35%. So I just want you to take some kind of consideration for all of the companies that are being cut out of those situations. I'm not going to go through a lengthy application process and get hit with interest.
Thank you for sharing that. You make an excellent point. There are fundings available also, and I'll have you guys answer, but there are, specifically in Cambridge, funds where they'll give you a grant, but you have to pay for it up front and get reimbursed. So you may get a $50,000 grant. Where are you going to get the $50,000 to pay for that and get reimbursed? So those are some examples too, but answer.
I add one last thing. We love speaking up at these forums, but please don't think it goes unnoticed. We take heat for it when we do, especially those of us who work other jobs. I am blessed enough to not have to work another job, but like for someone working a job and growing their business, they can't always advocate for what they need, because they're going to catch hell and high water when they get to work from.
So you want to touch?
Yeah, so I just want to touch a little bit on Biz Empower and kind of the evolution of the legacy of what Biz Empower was as a program and how it's changed in this last round. So Biz Empower is not a reimbursement grant. I just want to point that out. Not a reimbursement grant, it's for future projects. In this round, we kind of really listened to the prior legacy version of Biz Empower involved crowdfunding and a match component. So I don't know if you were referencing that when you were speaking. Like a one-for-one sort of match with community dollars and state matched funds. With the current or the new round of Biz Empower, we only require business owners to have 20% at hand at their business bank account. So think about if you have a $12,000 project, you only have to show $2,000 in your bank account, and then so that 20% match at hand, and then mass development will match 10. So when we redesigned the program, we thought about low to moderate income business owners. Instead of doing a 1-to-1, we did it at a 20% match at hand. But yeah.
And I would say those are really good, like you speaking up. I mean, hopefully I think you were suggesting that there's like retaliation for you speaking up, and I mean, we would never do something like that, but I think we take that feedback, and we're in a coalition that is advocating for capital, but also for changes to programs to make them more accessible. So when we hear your stories of like that the way you structured it doesn't work is really important, right? Because it's impossible to know that every single, issue that could arise. And so when they start to come up, right, because you're speaking up, it's really important. So thank you for your comment.
I want to acknowledge, I'm sorry for not acknowledging you, Cambridge City Council Patty Nolan's here, and she had a quick question or comment.
I also, I'm a community member, but I did run a couple small businesses in the past, including working on river ownership. And I know it's very hard. My question is, look at this room. This is not your traditional financing room for businesses. Having worked on employee ownership, walking into a room where I was the only woman walking into a room where all these people, I mean, it wasn't that long ago, but it was assumed I was the secretary or something. I mean, that still happens for gender and people of color discrimination. So what advice do you have to change the narrative around as people walk in the room? There's still, I think, a lot of people who don't look at a particular room or a particular person or a model of employee ownership. It's not as widespread as it should be. It should have completely changed. So how do we counter that kind of narrative in the more traditional, but also some of the non-traditional funders who may want someone to come in with confidence and exude something, and they may not have that personality, and therefore the flexibility to have funding, if that makes sense, that particularly women and from different cultures and sometimes do not approach it in a way that enables, I think, the funders to then see confidence and therefore invest in them, if that makes sense. How do we counter that? What advice do you have for us to make sure that narrative doesn't fail?
Jessica?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on that. I think just a couple of things, and I totally agree with you. One is, and it's so easy to say, don't get intimidated, but don't get intimidated. I mean, I love being the stupidest person in the room and asking the questions that it turns out a whole bunch of other people have too. And I think someone once told me finance is like church, where you go to a new church and people are standing and sitting and kneeling and saying things, and you're like, why are we doing this? And I don't know, it's just what we do. Like the terms are just used, and I don't think anyone really actually knows what they mean. So I think asking questions, not being afraid to ask questions, really doing the homework. Unfortunately, people who are excluded have to work harder, and that's how it's been for a long time. But having those numbers done up front, taking advantage of the help that you can get and the people who can sit with you, and really for someone like me who doesn't come from a finance background and working through all that. The other thing, two things I would add is, one, really like reclaiming some of the values orientation. So I'm in divinity school studying really where money and spirituality come together. And, there's a lot in all of our cultures around money, and there's a lot of ethical teachings. And I think we're taught to leave that behind when we go into the business world. But I say bring that with you. And not that you should start, evangelizing to your banker, but, bring that judgment and those values with you, because that is part of what you offer as a small business person of the community for the community. And then the last thing is, I think one thing I always want with small businesses is like really articulate your impact to the community, and think broadly about that. I mean, don't make things up, but think about who you're employing and, what you're paying them and who your suppliers are and, the impact, your environmental impact and your transportation impacts. I think there's a really strong message of impact and return with a small business that with a little bit of back of the envelope math, you have a story there that starts to counter just the one kind of return. So those are a few things I would say, but it's a great question.
Thank you. You had a question? Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Sharon. I own a construction company, and I attempted to apply for the business animal power thing, but the submittable, it messed me up. It wouldn't send my application. I don't know why. I emailed you guys, so we can talk about that later. But I just wanted to say that in my industry, it's primarily industry of a lot of nepotism, a lot of they say diverse companies where wives are put on the company name, really in the background their brothers or cousins that are working in the company, and we have a lot of capital needs. So I'm just trying to figure out how, and actually with your program and the way you guys promote your programs, I had issues with like maybe the website and people telling me different things about your program. That's why I didn't apply as soon as I could. At first I was told that I had to fundraise, and on the website it said I had to fundraise. Then that disappeared somehow, and then they said you have to fundraise to get the funds, and then you have to do the 20%, but then you have to be sponsored by a community organization. And I'm doing a cohort with Dorchester Bay right now from construction hustle, but they were telling me that the people there were telling me that I had to be sponsored. But then I read through the byline last minute just to make sure, because I was doing my application, and it said that if you could be helped by an organization. So that's why it kind of took me a while to be like, I'm gonna go. Should I submit? Am I even qualified to submit? So I hope to speak to you later about like my application, because it's just the submittable was terrible. A lot of people that I know that was trying to apply had an issue with the tables, had an issue with some of the trying to upload things. So I'm just letting you know, like with small business, we have such limited time. We're trying to manage employees. We're trying to manage our businesses. Is there a more streamlined process that you guys will do in the future? Not using submittable, using a different platform, because I've had issues with submittable before for other brands. Like they have no customer support. Just give me some feedback. And if what you think you can do to like simplify the process and get the word out to more businesses. Because I maintain a database of grants and I try to spread it to all. I share with my friend here, to all women that I meet, especially women of color that have businesses and don't find that they're just hesitant to even apply for a grant because they don't think they're qualified. There's all these bylines. There's no like. It's just not simplified for us enough to be like, okay, I'm gonna go and do it. And I try to encourage. I even do a webinar like to show them how to like apply, show them how to use AI. Try to do like just me advocating for them to take charge and not just self-fund and bootstrap, because we're so not enough. You know, they give me 50 and it's gone from my payroll.
It sounds like you're ready for
Yes.
not just the grant financing, but other financing because you're getting contracts, right? So come talk to us too. Yeah.
So
But Dorchester Bay is running a great program.
Just saying, like, how you guys think you're gonna make it a little bit more, publicize it more to more women of color, especially who own businesses and other groups that own businesses. And then also make the process a bit more simplified so it's approachable. Because I feel like it's very intimidating for a lot of people. And I try to dumb it down and be like, oh no, you don't, they already have to do this, this, and that. Don't, please apply. And I have to like beg them so I can apply. So I'm just saying, like, there's a need out there, but the way it's being done is so administrative, so like rigid that a lot of people, they either don't know about it, or when they do know about it, they are hesitant to even go forward. So how will we?
Well, thanks for sharing your experience and comment, and I'm sure Theresa can
Sure,
connect
I will
with you.
connect with you after. And for those in the audience, this round was, I understand that it was a very, very compressed round, and also that we were formerly MGCC that merged with Mass Development. So for the future, I'm going to take your feedback in how it was communicated throughout, throughout the state. We'll think about it more on our strategic sort of level for outreach. And yeah, I look forward to connecting more after. And and also, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, couple more questions. One more?
I'll be quick.
Okay. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Sandra Mon, co-founder of Jovial. Thank you all for sharing your experience and perspectives. I think it's great to learn about all of the different options that are obviously for funding, but I think as many people mentioned, super overwhelming, especially if you don't come from a financial background, right? Understanding all the different financial instruments and where to start. And so I kind of want to touch back on your question before of like, where do we begin? If you were to advise this group, what's the one thing they can do immediately after this event? What would you tell them?
Biddy, you want to start?
Are you talking about for capital specifically?
Yeah, so there are people who are like, okay, I should think about financing, and maybe even to dig more. One side is education, which you all mentioned, right?
Yeah.
And I think, again, the resources are everywhere, where it's not just about finding the resources, it's finding the right resources
Right.
at the right time.
Yeah.
And so I think this woman just mentioned here, it's like she's doing all the things, looking everywhere, but maybe they're not the right time. And so how do
Yeah.
you scale the support for all of the different types of businesses and owners out here?
That's a $1 million question. it's yeah. Yeah. So so the thing is, a lot of these coaching programs out there are specific to either an industry, a sector. They're very loan focused as well. Like there are actually not a lot of providers like us that take time to understand the breadth of capital, what's best for you when you need it. So I would say it starts with like finding, I think, a coach, right? We do business advising and coaching, and it's sitting down with you to say, what is your business? What are you trying to achieve? What stage are you at? Working with you on financials. I mean, in the end, you do need financials. You need to have a path, right, for creating revenue. And you have to be building a sustainable business because that's what we want. We want you to create jobs, right? We want you to build wealth. And so you have to have a pathway for that, and then figuring out what is the right fit for financing and other resources takes, honestly, a few conversations, right, to understand what the plan is. There's no silver bullet is my point. I don't think, and I take my own experience. I was starting a kids fitness business, and I spent literally a year, going from program to program, trying to find what is the right fit. I ended up doing the Babson Win Lab, which is a year-long program for women entrepreneurs that got me very clear, not on capital, but on what do I want to do, right? And then the capital I learned from Boston Impact, from BII, right? Because we talked about the whole spectrum and when is it right for you. There are some, this is a funny one. Tory Burch Foundation on their website actually has some really good resources around, you answer a couple questions around your business, and it tells you here's the types of capital that might be a fit for you. It's not perfect, but it's one way to start. So you might like just do some self-educating around that. The treasurer's office here in Massachusetts has a whole website that they built for small businesses with a ton of resources, and it's sorted by programs, capital types, where you go. I think the state has launched a small business open door program that can help connect you to a navigator that can then direct you. That's what we need to do more of. I can't tell you there's a perfect silver bullet, go to this, but at least you want to find someone that has a breadth of knowledge versus and you can tell, right? If they're like, oh, go to a bank, you're like, okay, thanks, no. So it takes a little bit of time to look for it. I can tell you where to go to if we can talk one-on-one.
So before I move on, I went to, speaking of Coach, I know the city of Cambridge has a resource for coaches. However, Patty Nolan, it's a 6-month wait.
I got any ideas for policy in Cambridge?
Okay, so keep going.
I just want to echo that. I think my ecosystem is different in Rhode Island, so I obviously can't speak specifically to Cambridge, but I generally try to refer people to the more generalist technical assistance providers. Our SBDC office has some good folks. Our Center for Women in Enterprise has had some good folks, although they've had some layoffs. Again, in Rhode Island, it tends to be more about like the individual people who I know will give really quality advice and have a broader picture, which is not, to your scaling point, not exactly the way to do it, but that's usually how I try to answer.
So I'm going to wrap up, unless you have anything else to add. No? Okay. So I'm going to wrap up. Thank you guys for being here, guys and gals. I hope you're able to take away some resources. I think the key is relationships are partnerships. Network. Find resources starting with your local community. Join Cambridge Local First. Join the Cambridge Somerville Black Business Network. We've got $350,000 of grant if you're a Cambridge Black-owned business to give away. So apply before the end of the year. Join networks. Seek out any one of these organizations. Know that you are part of a similar value system who care about your business. Use your voices. Use your voices. It's so important. And don't be afraid to stand up for your values. And show up at this pop-up we're having in collaboration with Cambridge Local First. It's a flyer for small businesses on 1175 Mass Ave. Cambridge Street. It's actually a pilot program for affordable ground floor retail. And that space is going to be for 3 or 4 businesses that are affordable ground floor retail by the Cambridge Redevelopment Authority. So look for the flyer in the back and show up on June 28th and 29th and see some small business pop-up marketplace folks. Anything else? Continue throughout the day. There'll be a lot more workshops, and then come party with us this afternoon and see what kind of talk to businesses, network. Really, we hope you get something out of this. We hope you've gotten something out of this panel. Please give a round of applause for our panelists today.